my friends? I hope you guys are doing well tonight. I come to talk to you guys about something that I hate to deal with. I hate dealing with this. This is not something that's fun for me at all. And that's internet drama. It's probably the lowest form of entertainment out there. Unfortunately, I was, for a bit, at the center of it. Some of you may know Andy Warski and PPP. They came out with this video about me, about yours truly, anime-ritis. And frankly, it was kind of funny. I thought it was kind of funny, but even though it was definitely slamming me, I was considering going on Warski's show. I actually was planning on going on. And internet issues, that was not an excuse. That was real. I'm going to have people come over to my house to fix the line under my house because my internet is so bad. Alright, that's why this is pre-recorded. Okay, so hopefully that makes sense. However, just as I was reflecting more, and the kind of people that watch that show are just not people I really want to engage with, and they're interested in like harming me and my family and things like that. And that's just not the kind of thing that I'm going to platform or want to be a part of. All right, and so I just want to clarify some things. And this is the only time I'm going to do it. I'm not going to make a bunch of response videos. This is it. This is the only one you get. And so I just want to first correct some factual errors. One, I'm not a Groiper general, and at this point I'm hardly involved in Groiper politics. In fact, later on I'll discuss how I'm kind of trying to distance myself from kind of that scene. I'll just talk about that later. Two, I went to the first Stop the Steal, the one in DC, not the January 6th one, and then I went to one in Phoenix, Arizona. That's the only 2 times I've ever talked to Nick Fuentes. I didn't go to any of the AFPACs, the New York thing, none of that. I'm not that involved in Groiper, like in inner Groiper politics. I really kind of have this distance, just naturally, because my content is very theological, not political. I haven't done hundreds of streams that revolve around my anime pillow or me being goofy and silly and looking like a loser. That's not happened either. I know PPP said you can't fake this stuff because he does so many streams. I really didn't do that many, which is why there aren't that many clips. It was a time when I used to do like a theology part and then like a fun part, and then sometimes in that fun part, that second half of the stream, I would kind of I'd go a little off script, I guess you could say. And so that's kind of now what I want to respond to as well. And there's 3 kind of categories. Obviously, a lot of those clips were taken out of context. Some of them were literally just mere jokes, and they cut off the part where I said, I'm joking, I'm kidding, that's obviously a joke. The second thing is something that's like a moral lesson that I was explaining, and they cut off that part. I explained that. And the third part, like the third category in which these clips can fall into is irony. It is irony. Alright, so I'll get to that in a second. So some of them were mere jokes, like I said. And the stuff about anime being heaven was literally just a joke. Like, yeah, I was kidding around. It was funny, and that's why. And it was funny to other people, which is why they clipped it and they put it on the Clips channel that was basically dedicated and associated with myself. Like, I was associated. I know the person who ran it. We talked together. Some of the clips were about moral lessons. They were stories about me and the anime pillows and my dad finding them. And they're real. They're real stories. I didn't lie. Maybe embellish some details a bit. Like when I talked about like, oh, last year, the year before, I wasn't able to sing happy birthday to anyone. Well, that's true, but I still recorded it and uploaded it to Instagram for that kind of the irony reason, and I'll get to that in a second. And I understand that like without the context, it makes me look like a total loser, because during that time period in my life, I kind of was a total loser. And ironically, during that time period, and this was, by the way, when I first started college, when I first began my journey in college, and I was trying to find myself. I had just come from this very kind of sheltered background. I was finally opened up to the world around me, and I was agnostic. I was kind of LARPing as this deist online. People might remember that. I was like Kantian deist or something like that on Instagram. I was basically just LARPing. I was really in this dark place spiritually, emotionally, and mature wise. And I was not a fan of AF. Ironically, I was not a fan of AF. I did not like Nick Fuentes. I was a libertarian for the most part. If not, like, I was like very liberal on many issues, social issues. I really wasn't conservative during this time period, so I was not a fan of Nick Fuentes, ironically. So that all those stories about me and the anime pillows have nothing to do with people who watch Nick Fuentes. I hate to break that to people, but it's true. And the point of me sharing those is to reflect the moral growth that has developed over time in myself, that came from rejoining the Catholic Church and allowing Christ's transformative power to really penetrate my life. It's not me who went from like going and like literally like cuddling with anime pillows in a car, being a total like loser, to now I'm very normal. I work out, which is kind of funny because I literally like derided someone for that. But no, I work out now. I lift. I go on dates with girls. I live a pretty normal life. Very professional. Don't want to really get too explicit, but I'm no longer like this undesirable kind of person. And this is not my own doing. This is really the work of Christ working within me. And that was kind of my point, is to talk about that transformative power and that growth that comes with being Catholic and what have you. And so the stuff that happened is true. That stuff about me and the pillows and my dad finding out and my brothers and all that stuff. But that undesirable part of my life does not define who I am today, nor does it have anything to do with America First. And the reason why I shared those stories, I know I was being vulnerable with people, is one, they're funny and people like funny stories, and two, to inspire people to follow the same example. There are a lot of people online who are terminally online. It doesn't matter what community you look at. This is true of alt-right AF, Warski's community, liberal communities, leftist communities, Vouchers communities, Destiny community, wherever it is, you're going to find weird people who are just very like maladjusted. They're not going to be like very normal. And so I wanted to encourage them and say, look, through participation in the Catholic Church, through rejoining and being integrated in a life with Jesus Christ, a life of grace, there's a real flourishing that comes with that. That touches a lot of other parts of your life. You get more balanced and become a more well-balanced person. And yeah, I'm still quirky. I still enjoy anime. And I own that. I own the fact that I'm quirky. I own the fact by having those anime pillows. It's kind of like, yeah, I'm quirky. I'm a little weird. I like anime. Yeah, here's my anime pillows as like a backdrop for that. It's the juxtaposition is very intentional. And it started off as just a hobby. Like any weeb, you know, you might collect, some people collect posters, some people collect figures. I like the anime pillows. And it's not like a Kuming thing. They're very expensive if you're getting the real kind, the legit kind, not the bootlegged Chinese version. It's not like you just go on Amazon.com and order the first one you see, the first Dakimakura you see. Rather, you have to go through all these proxies, and because in order to ship from Japan, it's a long and complicated process, and it's for that reason it's kind of like a hobby. You know, it's something like model airplanes or something like that. And so it's an old hobby, and so most of the time the anime pillows just sit in my closet. But yeah, I'll bring them out as props. And the juxtaposition between me talking about theology and the anime pillows is intentional. It brings people and it attracts people's attention, right? I've begun to kind of reduce the number of them just as my channel's grown in size. I want it to be accessible to the most number of people possible. And I've noticed that some people are a little turned off by it. I've already kind of worked up a core base, so I don't know if I need them as much as when I first started, and I needed to bring in that, you know, I had to have some way of attracting people to my channel. And that kind of leads me and segues into the next kind of category in which these clips fall, which is irony. These clips, oftentimes I was playing like a character in a sense. I think one of the commenters was like, Anime Riot is either this deranged psychopath or he's a brilliant satirist. Like he's brilliant with his satire, and that's probably closer to the truth is that I took theater in high school. I know how to create this character, this dynamic. I didn't want to kill anyone just because they worked out. Like, anyone who watched that stream knows that, like, I was clearly not being serious. And you have to understand a little bit the context as well. The context does matter. Is this guy named Rem. He was clipping my channel. I knew that he had 900 subscribers on YouTube. I think his account got banned recently, so he probably now doesn't have as much, but at the time he had like 900 subscribers, and so I would very intentionally create something that would be able to be clippable, and so that way I could, you know, he would post on his channel and then I'd get more views. Everything was done with precision and purpose. All right, I want to make that very clear. And I don't want to be like the guy who's like, oh, unveiled, I explained the joke. I hate having to do that. Like I said, I don't like doing this. It's the only time I'll ever do it. But I feel like I should. I feel like it might be worth my time to explain. And then finally, the context matters also of the show I was doing. In middle school, I read this book called Nerds, and it stood for the National Espionage Rescue and Defense Society. And I love that idea of just taking this pejorative nerd and turning it into like this secret society. It was all cool. I was like, okay, I'm gonna do that with incel. I'm gonna create incel. And incel, and maybe this is American thing, maybe for the Canadian Warski and PPP, this is the way they understand incel is different. In America, incel is basically synonymous with loser. It's not synonymous with like terrorist. It stands for, I made a show called the Identitarian Nationalist Conservative Esoteric Legion. It had this really brilliant opening with the spy music, this slow jazz spy music from Detective Conan. It was like the theme song. It had these like the spinning black cubes. You know, it's esoteric Kabbalah stuff. It was really fun. It was a really fun show. People who are longtime viewers probably know it and miss it. Maybe I'll have to bring it back sometime. And so, of course, I played up like the incel bit. The same way PewDiePie plays it up. If you want, I watched his like one of his videos recently where he was like talking about how, oh, you shouldn't be nice to women. Like someone like played it, like showed him a clip of him like hugging his wife, and he's like, that's not me. I don't want to be nice to women. It was like a joke, and it's funny if it's being done clearly in irony, and that's what it was. It was just a meme, and I was like telling some dude, and so some dude, you know, comes into my comment section telling me to work out, bragging about, you know, his sexual exploits and what have you. I was like, this guy, he's the Batman to my Joker. Like, I'm this Joker character. He's my Batman. Like, he is my enemy. You need an enemy. You need that dynamic. You need the drama. And so that's what I was able to manufacture. And it was brilliant. It was creative and it was funny. And looking back, you know, I don't regret it. I understand that maybe the clips make me look retarded and stupid. But I think it was funny. I got a good laugh out of hearing it again. Maybe because I knew the context and I knew what was going on, so I could appreciate that, whereas other people are more just like stunned, like, is this guy real? Is this guy for real? Whereas I was like, I know who I am today and I know what's going on. But that being said, I do want to distance myself from like the America First as like this organization. For one, I don't want like these goofy things that I've done in my past to sully the reputation of Nick Fuentes. So like I said, I don't think the stuff I've done is not something I'm going to apologize about. I don't think it's as bad as people want it to be. Like I said, it's like a lot of it's irony and joking. But regardless, I don't want that kind of stuff. People might find these clips later in the future to say, oh, this is a reflection on America First. This is an indictment of the America First movement. No, thank you. I don't want that to happen. I don't want anyone in AF who complimented me or said nice things about me. It's like, oh, look, they're complimenting and they're endorsing this kind of behavior. They probably didn't know about those clips. I know for sure that Nick Fuentes had not seen any of the clips of me in the pillows before he said that he saw me as like this cool person. He just met me in DC. I look nice. I dress nice. I'm presentable, articulate, I guess. Not trying to be too bragocious here, but you know, I was a nice guy, and he's like, oh, okay, this guy's cool. So that's all it was. But again, I don't want this to be an indictment, so I'm going to distance myself from kind of that sphere. And the second reason is because I've kind of outgrown America First. I no longer feel like I'm on the same wavelength as the spirit of the movement. As I've grown more mature, it feels like AF has increasingly grown kind of more immature. And I hate being like the person who like has to say these things. But I'm just not aware that anyone like who's close to Nick, or anyone really who's high up is like trying to correct these things. There's, as far as I'm aware, there's no public retraction of a lot of these things. And I'm really trying to be humble about this, recognizing, you know, my own failings, my own imperfections. So please see this as like a filial correction. But for these reasons, like I feel like I need to just get some space. I still agree with AF, and in terms of like, you know, its essential principles, American nationalism, its policy decisions, conservatism, traditionalism, all that stuff still applies. But some of the language and the rhetoric is just things that I just don't know if I can get behind in the same way I once could. For example, optics are just, they no longer seem like they're important anymore. It used to be the case that like saying that you're racist is bad optics. And regardless of however you want to define optics, I explicitly remember Nick Fuentes saying like that he would not call himself a racist because that would be bad optics. He said, well, if racism is defined as hating black people, well, then I'm not racist. If racism is defined as recognizing that races exist, then, well, I'm not going to say I'm racist because that would be bad optics. That's literally like a direct quote. Paraphrase. So that's one of the reasons, is just like the optics of America First has really gone, I think, downhill. And that's the one thing I really liked about America First, was its presentation. The product is very presentable, and therefore it could be accessible to more people, like more mainstream people. But I feel like that's kind of been lost now ever since, I don't know when. I don't know exactly the time frame, but that's something that's bothered me for a while, and so something that I want to talk about. And then the second thing is the stance on the women. It's just, it's not okay. It contradicts, you know, our position on family values, and I think it's frankly kind of abhorrent. Like, yeah, women, sure, you don't want them maybe in politics. You can argue for that. We can argue that they're more empathetic thinkers, and they're not as like abstract, or they care less about maybe the common good and more the individual good, or something like that. But to say that they're irrational and to predicate that to women just simpliciter is to imply, whether or not you intend this to be the case or not, the way what it implies is that, you know, the great women doctors of the church, Catherine of Siena, Therese of Lisieux, even our Blessed Virgin Mother, are irrational. They're like dehumanized. This is, you know, this is not just like bad, like in just in a general sense. Like, this is not just like, this makes me viscerally like uncomfortable, but this is like theologically censured. This is called offensive to pious ears. And that doesn't mean like I'm being hyperbolic. I'm not like just like saying, oh, I'm really pious and better than everyone, and that's why no, or like I'm a snowflake, I'm offended. Offensive to pious ears is a theological category in which you're speaking irreverently of holy things, and by saying that, you're implicitly basically saying something that is irreverent of the saints. And so I have a real problem with that. I think that is an issue. And the same or something similar could be said of like the I hate women. Women are, of course, made in God's image. They're God's creation. To hate women simpliciter is to simply hate God. You can't hate anyone, in fact. It doesn't matter if they're your worst enemy. Christ says to love your enemies. I just don't understand that. And the people who said things like, oh, well, it just means that we don't like the vapid culture that's ubiquitous, or the general ubiquitous culture amongst women, or something like that, which is probably, you know, not, I would say it's very prevalent among men too, the degeneracy and the vapid culture, what have you. I don't think it's very unique to women. Regardless, that's like, I remember Nick Fuentes saying that's not the interpretation. He said that no, that he scoffed at that idea. He scoffed at that person who said that, and said no, we just want misogyny, like it's in the 1950s, or it's like Afghanistan, it's brutality and the Taliban, or really weird examples that are very antithetical to the Christian message. Like I can never imagine a saint saying this, or I can never imagine saying this to a priest. I can never imagine our Lord saying something like this. And so on its face, it's just, its implications are offensive to pious ears. It's just theologically central. And maybe you can say like, oh, you're just being autistic. It means something completely different. You're just taking it at its literal value. You can say it doesn't sound like, or it isn't, it doesn't mean what it exactly sounds like, what it literally sounds like. You try to say that I'm misinterpreting it or whatever. But the objective interpretation, the way anyone else is going to hear this, and that's what's important. I can't judge anyone's soul. I don't know, and I'll be very, very clear, I don't know where anyone is at spiritually. That's not at all what I'm trying to do, is judge anyone's soul. I've only had admiration for Nick Fuentes' standing up for Christianity and Christian values. I've always admired him for that. All I can say, though, is that these things are theologically problematic in the way that they objectively come off to anyone who is impartial, any reasonable person who hears these things. And then, of course, the theology to back this up is just false. It would fall under the category of falsehood, which is another theological term. Sin did not come into this world through Eve. The scriptures are clear. She may have been tempted first, and she may have encouraged Adam to sin, but it's because of Adam's sin that original sin exists. It literally, read Romans 5:12-21, and then get back to me. It literally says that it's through Adam's sin, and this is why in Jewish tradition, the sin nature, the original sin nature, came from your father, whereas from your mother it came your Jewish nature, your holy nature, so to speak, your chosen nature, chosen like God's chosen people nature. And so even the church fathers said things like, if Adam and Eve had repented of their sin, God would have spared them and wouldn't have brought the stain of original sin. So just saying like, oh, Eve sinned first and therefore women are now to be are less than men or something like that is not true. It's not theologically accurate. It's not what the scriptures teach. It's not what the church has ever taught. This is like some weird Protestant 1950s argument. And so I say it's just weird. It's just spreading theological falsehoods. It's just not something I want to be associated with. It's not something that I want like tacked onto my name. Like I don't want people to think Anime-ritis, he's part of America First, he's part of that movement that says really weird things about women, like things that are just feel wrong and theologically offensive and frankly abhorrent. And then continue on to the whole incel meme. Obviously I was a part of it. I thought it was funny. PewDiePie was a part of it. It's gotten out of hand, guys. It's gotten out of hand, okay? Marriage is important, and maybe I've just grown out of it. Maybe it's for people in high school, it's funny, and that's fine. If you're in high school and you think that's funny, but you understand that later on you should get married. It's natural, it's normal. Having conjugal relations with your wife is normal, it's natural, it's what you're made to do, okay? That's the natural life. If you are supernaturally called to celibacy, then you should consider a vocation, not living in your mom's basement as a NEET, a vocation. You should become a priest. And so I think the glorification of singleness, of the condemnation of fake cells, I just don't think that's productive towards the end of trying to, recreate this traditional American environment, this traditional American ethos. And also I think it comes off sometimes, it could come off as an attack against matrimony, perhaps. And I don't think I'm being like extreme here. It's like every night Nick Fuentes is talking about something about fake cells and just weird, just really weird. Like that's the only like adjective that I can think of, like odd, just stuff that like you don't hear normal. Like if you go down the street and talk to people, that's not how they talk. It's like most people, like I go to church, I go to mass, I ask people, like, what do you think of like Nick Fuentes? And they say, well, I probably agree with him on like maybe 98% of his political views, but he just comes off a little bit like, he just comes off too like a loose cannon or rough around edges. Things like this I hear quite a bit. And I can understand why when you're like saying things about how like, how you would call something about like how you would call Hitler a fake cell. Like, who compares themselves to Hitler, who's wants to not to be associated with that? it's just odd stuff. So again, please don't see this as me trying to be hateful. I'm not an AF hater. I'm not. I want to see them succeed. I want to see them do well. I pray for their success. I'm not like Warski. I'm not like PPP in that regard. I'm not hoping they lose. I'm hoping they do right. And that's why I bring these things up. And yeah, I will probably get, you know, some heat for this, but I think this was pressed upon my conscience. It's something that's bothered me for a while. And now that I'm being like kind of nailed as someone who's like associated intimately with AF, I want to make it very clear publicly. This has always kind of been, not always, but had been de facto the case for a while, but publicly just say, yeah, I'm kind of distant from AF. I operate autonomously, I operate my own kind of ways of doing things. I do theology. I'm not part of Cozy TV. I'm not really in like a lot of those AF circles. I don't really talk to a lot of those people that are really up there. I think a lot of my followers might be, and I have no interest in cutting off those relationships. I have no interest in stop being friends with you just because you like AF. That's not at all what I'm trying to do here. I'm not trying to divorce myself from anyone. All I'm trying to do is say that I think that when you think of anime rightist, I don't want you guys to think about some of the stuff that Nick Fuentes has said about women. That's it. Because those just it doesn't represent who I am. It just doesn't. And at one time, maybe you could say, oh, the movement isn't Nick Fuentes, it's greater than that. But at this point, it kind of is. It just is. Like, the movement is Nick Fuentes, and Nick Fuentes is the movement. Like, what Nick Fuentes says goes. That's the dogma. That's the orthodoxy of America First. And I'm just strayed from the orthodoxy. I'm heterodox, I guess. So those kinds of issues are things that bothered me for a while. And so that's why I just want to conclude on that. But again, another reason too, and this is probably like just as equally strong, is I don't want the goofy things I've done. I've done things that are goofy, and maybe that's all Nick Fuentes is doing. I can't judge his soul. Maybe he's just he think this is in the same way I was being goofy and eccentric. He's doing something similar, perhaps. And so just as I don't want my eccentric clips of myself to solely or ruin their reputation, America First and Nick Fuentes, the same way I don't want that to happen to me either. I don't want that kind of division. I think that's probably the best way to cooperate. And again, I pray for the success of everyone who loves God. Any movement who supports Jesus Christ is a movement, you know, I'm going to be praying for. It's just about the level, the gradation of involvement. So hopefully that made sense, and please do share with me your comments. I am interested. I'm not dogmatic about these things. I'm not irrational about these things. Please, I don't see me as like a wignet or a hater or anything like that. It's not the way I want to come off. I want to come off as a reasonable, well-adjusted person, because that's what I am. I'm a well-adjusted, normal person trying to live a normal life and teach theology in the process while being a little quirky. That's it. That's all Anime Rightist is. I care most importantly about the salvation of the souls and the education of the catechism. Catechetical education. So with that out of the way, I want to thank you guys for listening. I hope you have a great rest of your evening, and I hope to see you in the next video.